opposed to the digital participants. Would they like to have a seat?
And then you make them so popular in Shemayim that you may even have dead participants you can't see. Is that really about this is record? It was so popular in Shemayim, it should be one called Israel, a whole bunch of dead people came to hear it called Israel.
Yeah. So there's Penny and Pinchas. Oh, the Pinchas, we're waiting for you. And Davi, please have a seat. You're plugging yourself in.
I'm plugging myself in. Charging myself up.
Okay, so as the custom recently is that we begin with a capital Tilim on behalf of the Bnei Yisrael, wherever they may find themselves, and especially in Eretz Yisrael, and especially those holy shluchim of ours, the soldiers who are fighting for our protection. So we'll say capital Chaf. Lamnatzayach mizvali David Yan Hadino B'Yitzar Yisagev Hashem Elehei Yaakov Yishlach Ezer Hamikodesh Umitzi Yan Yisadeka Yiska Kol Minchaisecha V'Yelos Hayidash Neselo Yitem lecha chilavavecha v'chalatzas chayimalei niranim nabishu asecha v'shem elihedo nitgol yimar adinoi kol mishadlei secha ata yadati ki heshi adinoi meshichai yane yom yishmeka shebegevureis yeshayimiknei ela v'refer v'yela lasosim V'anachnu b'shem Adonai Eloheinu naskin. Hey lo koro v'nafalo v'anachnu kamu v'nisei dad Adonai Heshiya HaMelech Yaneinu v'yom kareinu. Okay. Actually there was a rough from the Rebbe to end with Kapitel Kufnun, which is interesting. It's I haven't seen any other reference for Kapitel Kufnun, but okay, absolutely, for sure.
Absolutely,
you should say
Hashem to do what he has to do.
Exactly. Hallelujah, hallelujah, because hallelujah, beki yauzay, hallelujah, begeborei sov, hallelujah, kerei butlei, hallelujah, besei kashay, for hallelujah, beneivel v'chitor, hallelujah, besei pumochel, hallelujah, beminim et ve'ugav, hallelujah, b'tziltzalei shama, hallelujah, b'tziltzalei sru, akel, annishamet, hallelujah. So in the last year, it was actually 2 weeks ago. I wasn't here last week. So I did a little overview on the halachos of, we'll call it what it's commonly referred to, the halachos of muktzah. More accurately, it should be called the halachos of Isser Tiltol, the halachos that somehow that they they instruct us as to what limits us as to what we can handle on Shabbos. But before I do so, I want to share something else that has to do with the current situation in Eretz Yisrael. So last week I heard an article. I heard an article because I was driving, and my wife read it while I was driving from a WhatsApp group that she was on. You may have already read this article. Things get around very quickly these days. Basically, I'm not sure who the author of the article was, but they addressed that which is actually the unspoken. And what I mean by the unspoken is that I haven't seen anybody actually say this, Baruch Hashem, but it's almost inevitable that there are some people who at least entertained the thought, and that is that this very, very unfortunate event that took place, this horrific catastrophe that took place in Eretz Yisrael. So we know that one of the targets was a festival that was taking place, and the other targets were kibbutz, moshav, that were not necessarily known to be a kibbutz dati or a moshav dati. They're rather secular. And I'm even hesitant to even say this, but because of how this article dealt with the unspoken, but perhaps it may have been a fleeting thought that went through somebody's mind, chas v'shalom. So it's worthwhile addressing, and not only worthwhile addressing, the lesson is so powerful and so amazing. Okay, so I'll give you the background. In this article, they referenced a sikha from the Rabbi that took place in the early years of the Nesius. You know what I'm referring to, Chaim? Oh, okay. You want to bring up that article? Yeah. So basically, what happened? You had the actual sikha, or you had the article. The sikha. I would like to see the sikha. So you actually you spoke about this before?
Yeah, but we'll do it again.
Okay. Because I want to take one nikuda from the sikha and elaborate on it, because it's a very fundamental nikuda, which I think is very helpful in many, many contexts, not just this particular context. So basically, the what had happened is that sometime in the 1950s, like I say, the early years of the Rebbe's Nesius. Now, Crown Heights at the time was a very Jewish neighborhood, but it was a very secular Jewish neighborhood. I remember, not maybe that far back, but when I was a child and I would go with my father for Simchas Torah, so I'm talking about in the early 60s, in the mid 60s, Crown Heights was a very, very Jewish neighborhood. I remember, for example, on Simchas Torah, so just walking to along Eastern Parkway, how it has the islands, right, on both sides that separate the local lane and the regular Eastern Parkway. So it was just packed with Yidden going into shuls, out of shuls. It was just packed, and then mothers with families and strollers, and it was mamish. It was like. But that already was probably already a point where it was becoming more, I think the majority maybe was already more traditional or more religious, but it was a very secular Jewish neighborhood.
And those Crown Heights actually was very secular, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so it was a very Jewish, but also very secular. So apparently, I'm sorry?
And your day was really just very.
So I'm talking about when I was a child in the early 60s, when I would go with my father for Simchas Torah. I just remember how the streets were literally packed on Simchas Torah, how people coming in the shul. There were shuls everywhere, right? And on Eastern Parkway, there were a couple of very big shuls. There was the Jewish Center, which actually wasn't really Orthodox. It was I think a conservative. But then further down in the other direction, you had Chayyuvei Torah, which was a very big shul, and then you had the next block, Young Israel, which was also a very big shul. These are like shuls, like the buildings are more like the style of Pali Tzedek or Shai Torah. They're still there. The buildings are there. In Crown Heights, of course, in Crown Heights, yeah. So there and literally, I mean, we actually stayed with a family that was not even Chabad. It was a family that the husband, the father, my father knew him because when my father just got married, he actually worked in Davenport, Iowa for a short time. And Davenport, Iowa. Not for long. I think my brother Yisrael was born in Davenport, Iowa. And there were packing houses there. He was a sheikhet. So yeah, probably still today, maybe. Yeah, you know it. Penny shaking his head. So there was also a school for chiropractory, whatever you call it. And there were Jewish students there, young Jewish students. So my father had befriended, I guess there weren't those many from Eden, in Davenport. So he had befriended a young fellow. The last name was Marcus, I remember. And then I guess when he graduated, he moved to Crown Heights, Eastern Parkway, just a couple blocks away from 770. And maybe not even a couple blocks. And we actually stayed there. We used to stay there with them because we had no family in Crown Heights, right? Mm-hmm. But my father knew the Marcus family. Just on the side, if I may, he was a chiropractor, right? And
this
Marcus fellow, yeah. I lost touch. I have no idea where they are. They moved out of Crown Heights, and I have no idea where this Marcus family is today. But like I say, we stayed there for Sukkot Torah, and I just remember as a child being very embarrassed once because after the night of Hakafis, which would end very, very late, right? So my parents let me sleep in, and then when I got up and I was going out to go to Shul to 770, right? My parents had my father, my grandfather, I think stayed there also that year. Rabbi Posner, and they already left the Shul. And I'm walking out of the house, and I had to walk right by the dining room. They were already eating Sudas Yamtiv. And it was a little embarrassing for me that I'm going to Shul and they're already after Kiddush. But in any case, actually, I'm kind of impressed that at such a young age, I actually felt a little embarrassed. But in any case, this Dr. Marcus, this chiropractor, Dr. Marcus, was in Yechidus by the Rabbi. He would be what we describe as being maybe like a young Israel type, or maybe modern Orthodox. I mean, I hate labels, but just to get an idea. So he was in Yechidus, and the Rebbe was very interested about the chiropractic, the whole practice, right? Well, and there was a school there. It was the first one in Davenport. Okay, maybe I didn't know. Okay, but in any case, the Rebbe asked him if he could borrow the books that they use, in the courses. The Rebbe wanted to borrow the books of this Dr. Marcus.
Oh wow!
Yes, of course, he obliged, and then sometime later, the books he gave them back, and this Dr. Marcus showed my father that the Rebbe put footnotes into the book. So. Like I say, I don't. That would be very interesting if we could find it somehow, Okay, Tafshin Yudalid it was. Okay, right. So it was actually exactly 70 years ago. Okay, so in any case, the Rebbe. I guess when the Rebbe was walking to Shul, right? The Rebbe was walking to Shul. And it was a group of, I guess, Jewish kids, teenagers, whatever, and they were having a party. It was Simchas Torah, but they weren't necessarily celebrating, at least in their minds, they weren't celebrating Simchas Torah. Okay? They were not celebrating Simchas Torah. So the Rebbe, at the Farbrengen of Simchas Torah, the Rebbe addressed. You would assume that on Simchas Torah, it's a very special day, especially in Lubavitch. We make such a big deal about what a great day Simchas Torah is. Simchas Torah, I mean, if you think of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur as special days, and everybody does, they're referred to as the Yomim Neiraim. These are very, very special days. Well, according to Hasidus, especially in Chabad, Simchas Torah is not a separate Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but rather Sukkot in general is the culmination of all that took place on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and that comes to its peak, so to speak, on Simchas Torah. So Simchas Torah is just a continuation of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Very special time, right? And then you're walking to shul or going home from shul or whatever, and then this is what you witness, a party, not a party that was infused with a lot of holiness and kedusha. Okay, perhaps just the opposite. Now, the Baal Shem Tov was a revolutionary, and they ever quoted something from the Baal Shem Tov, right? In order to give a perspective on what on the surface looked to be something that was unfortunate. That young Jewish kids on Simchas Torah, rather than going into shul and dancing the kafis in shul, are having a party out in the street or maybe in a nightclub or whatever it may be, right? So the Rebbe said, we know we have a Torah from the Baal Shem Tov, and this is what I want to actually focus on and elaborate a little bit on this Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. The Torah of the Baal Shem Tov said that when a Yid gets hungry, right? Now, anybody, you ask someone, I want to look at the Sikha right now because I looked for it, but I didn't see it, but thanks to Rabbi Itkin, I have the Sikha here. Could you find here the pasuk that the Baal Shem Tov was basing this on? Do you remember it being here in the Sikha? Okay, so it's based on a pasuk in Tehillim. But in any case, okay, so I don't see it right here. But the Baal Shem Tov are based on a pasuk again. Whatever. So the Baal Shem Tov said that when a Yid gets hungry, right? Now, when you think of a person getting hungry, yourself getting hungry, you don't think about your holy neshama, your nefesh elokis. As we know, every person has both a nefesh elokis, but primarily our physical life is basically it's animated and it's from the nefesh Bais. We're living physical lives, physical bodies with physical needs, right? And one of those physical needs is to eat, right? And our physical body, our nefesh Bais gets hungry, right? And then we want to eat. We don't think of it as necessarily a very holy thing, right? But then, of course, we know that in spite of the fact that it may not be a holy act, we, of course, have in our Avodas Hashem, we have a way to actually elevate that activity, right? So we could make it right, we could rectify the situation. We ate, we're hungry, right? I ate because I was hungry and I enjoyed the food and it was my nefesh habamis, my physical self that enjoyed the food. But at the end of the day, the energy, you know what, maybe I should use that energy to go to maybe to learn a little bit or maybe go to a shir or do a favor for a year, do whatever, right? So ultimately what happens is that the energy that you got from the food, in spite of what drove you to eat that food, right? And in spite of the experience that you had while you're eating the food, the pleasure and so on and so forth, right? Nonetheless, there is a way of rectifying that, so to speak, by using the energy that you get from the food and using it to serve Hashem. And in that way, you've elevated the food. Said the Baal Shem Tov, the fact that you got hungry in the first place was why. You think it's because you're just a physical human being, right? And this is the nature of physical human beings. That's the common denominator we have with the rest of the animals, which is why we call it a nefesh habamis, the animalistic. That's just a big cover-up. That's just a facade. At the end of the day, it's actually the nefesh elokis that wants you to eat that food. Because the nefesh elokis, what's its mission? That a Yid should serve the Eibishter. He knows that the Yid can't serve the Eibishter unless he has the energy to do so, right? So he has to be well rested and he has to be well fed, okay? Nutritiously well fed. The nefesh elokis knows who he's dealing with, right? So if the nefesh elokis will try to convince the person, meaning the behemoth, right, to eat so that he'd be able to serve the Eibishter, what are the chances that he'll actually succeed? right? Oh, but the Nefesh Elokis says, whoa, I know you actually like that food and you want that food, right? So he says, okay, good. So I'm going to make you hungry. And I'm happy that you're hungry. Because at the end of it, then says the Nefesh Elokis, I'm going to accomplish what I am here to accomplish. And that is that a Yid should serve, albeit a Yid who's very much, so to speak, he's dominated by a Nefesh Abamis to a great extent, right? But he should serve the Eibishter. So it's really the Nefesh Elokis behind it all, right? Behind it all. That's about for the Baal Shem Tov. A Yid gets hungry because the Nefesh Elokis knows that there's a nitzutz eliki that needs to be elevated. Only the Yid through his avodah can elevate that nitzutz. The only way you're going to get the Yid to actually take advantage of that energy, right, is if you make him hungry, because that's what behemoths do, and that's the way it is. Like my favorite story about the fox who told the policeman who came to arrest him, "But officer, I'm a fox. That's what we do." Okay. It was whatever. Anyway, so the Rebbe would often refer to this Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. Often. But the Rebbe would also, in addition, the Rebbe would give a mashal, a parable, in order to better understand what the Baal Shem Tov is saying. What's the mashal? The mashal that the Rebbe would use, and I don't think it originates from the Rebbe, and that is a group of Chassidim who are traveling to the Rebbe for Shabbos. So imagine you have a shtetl, hard-working Chassidim, right? And the Baruch Hashem, they have a shul, they have a shtibel, they get together for Shabbos, right? But they have a Rebbe. The Rebbe lives in a town, which is maybe a couple hours with a wagon, right? And whenever possible, especially if it was like a special Shabbos, maybe Shabbos B'Varchim or whatever it would be, a group of the Chassidim would get together, right? They get permission from their wife to leave for Shabbos. They would hire the Baal Agola, the one who has a wagon and a horse. And on Friday, we'll giving enough time for the Baal Agola to get back for Shabbos, right? They would hire him to take him to the Shtat, the bigger town where the Rebbe lived, so they could spend the Shabbos with their Rebbe. You can imagine this was very exciting. So already Thursday night, they started their plans, right? And so Thursday night, they're already having a Fabrengen, getting ready for their Nisiyah. They're very excited. They're very uplifted, right? And what are they talking at the Fabrengen? They're reminiscing about the last time they had the Rebbe. Ui, das ist so gewaltig. Hast du gesehen, wie der Rebbe hat gedavent? You saw how the Rebbe was davening. You could sense the malachim floating around in the air, malachim, and they were very much focused on malachim. They go to the Rebbe for Shabbos and they feel malachim. Okay, they're sitting early next morning. They hire the Baal Agola, tells them what it's going to cost. He ties up the horse to the wagon. They jump into the wagon and they're off for their 2-3 hour trip for Shabbos to the Rebbe. Sitting in the wagon, obviously they're continuing the Fabrengen, right? And what are they thinking? Malachim Amish. They're already feeling Malachim. They're seeing Malachim, right? They're not feeling too much their Nefesh Abamis, right? Even though the wife packed for them a little care package, right? But they're not focusing on the care package. They're focusing on the Malachim to be a Shabbos of angels. Anyway, amongst the Chassidim, one of them was somewhat of an intellectual, and he started a little discussion. Now, like I dabble in quantum mechanics, right, and know very little about. So there was a time that I dabbled in philosophy. And I read, different things from existential philosophers, including one great Jewish philosopher from Amsterdam. What was his name? Spinoza. Yeah. So Spinoza was like he was off, but I think he was a little misunderstood, but whatever. That's my own little. I'm gonna be Malamed Chus, whatever. So I was a little, without knowing much. I was, I tried to be Malamed Chus a little bit, at least, for Spinoza. He got excommunicated, from the community, but out of the
was that they were worried.
yeah, about the influence that he was going to have. No, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming.
But a message to the government if you would.
You should know Spinoza, he got it from both sides. He got it from his community for being too, what's it called? For excluding God. But the other philosophers of his time were accused Spinoza of being too God-centric. Okay, he was too God-centric. So the poor guy, he got it from both sides. He got it from his religious colleagues, and he got it from his philosophy colleagues, right? He got it from both sides. Anyway, so to give this a little philosophical spin, you look at a situation, right? And you want to look at it from an existential perspective, right? So you discover that you could be looking at the same thing, but you could be seeing something very different, right? For example, I remember reading once that if, let's say, an Israeli soldier sees two terrorists emerging from a tunnel, right? So, and they're coming with their weapons and their hand grenades, right? What does he do? He eliminates. How many people did the soldier eliminate? How many terrorists? I say people, they're not people, they're animals. So how many terrorists did he eliminate? Two. Okay, well, let's look at just that situation. That's another existential perspective. So he killed two. So this wasn't exactly the mashal, but in the mashal it says when a lion sees two people, right? And he's very hungry lion. Usually lions don't eat people, but in this case, the lion would have no hesitation to eat these two people, right? Does he see two people or does he just see a bigger lunch? Right? It's all about perspective, right? What is reality? Right? So to the lion, it's a big lunch. To someone else, it's two individuals, two people, right?
The lion says, oh my goodness.
Right.
There's a shortcut with there. Great.
So to give this little mashal a little of an existential philosophical perspective, so this maskell, we'll call him, right, sitting in the wagon says, the horse, without the horse, we're not getting to wherever they're going, right? He said, what's the horse thinking? The horse is thinking when he gets there, he's going to get a big bale of hay, right? He's going to get his hay. Okay. The horse is going for hay. Without the horse, we're not getting there, right? So maybe this whole trip is not about malachim, it's about hay, right? I'll take it a step further. The balagolo, he's not thinking hay, right? He has to pay for that. But he's thinking about the money that the chassidim are paying him for making the trip, right? So maybe this isn't about malachim. Maybe this is about money, right? What is going on over here? Is it hay? Is it money, right? And he's erklärt, big masculine. So what's, philosophically speaking, what is going on over here? What's going on? And to one of the chassidim said, said, weil der Pferd tracht Haber, just because the horse is thinking Haber. I mean, the malachim came malachim nicht, the malachim not malachim. Okay. The reality is malachim, right? If you look at this picture and you step back, it's not even about the chassidim, right? Because what's driving the chassidim? Malachim, right? So what's the ultimate reality of what's happening right here? If you look at it from the proper perspectives, what do you see? You just see malachim. The horse is thinking hay, but he's thinking hay because the chassidim need malachim. The balagolo is thinking money, but he's thinking money. Why is he thinking money? Because the chassidim want to get to the Rebbe, and the chassidim they want to get to the Rebbe. No, it's about the malachim that they're going to have. So the famous saying, and the Rebbe would say it in these words, when he would use this mashal, this parable, to explain what's going on with the nefesh habamis and the nefesh elokis. In reference to what the Baal Shem Tov said, he would say about the Pferd tracht Haber, because the horse is thinking hay. Does that in any way diminish the reality that it's about the malachim? The malachim is the different. The malachim don't count. Adarabah, to the contrary, it's all about the malachim. It's only about the malachim. So likewise, just because you're getting hungry and you're a human being and you're an Nefesh Habamis, so that's the behavior. So the behavior is thinking about hay. Okay, so your Nefesh Habamis is thinking hay. Does that mean that does it any way diminish the fact that ultimately it's so the Nefesh Elikis can get the Yid to then eat and then have the energy and then maybe later make the decision that maybe he should go to a shir and he's tired, he doesn't want to, but Baruch Hashem, he ate, he has some energy and he uses the energy and he goes to a shir, right? This is the Nefesh Habamis' way, the Nefesh Elikis' way, right, of taking a ride on the Nefesh Habamis. Right, and if you look in the Kotetera and Teira of the Alter Rebbe, this dynamic Nefesh Elikis and the Nefesh Habamis dynamic is that the Nefesh Elikis was sent down into this world. In this world, its capacity is greatly limited and diminished, and it has to find all kinds of tricky ways. And the ways that it finds is ultimately by riding the horse. It takes a ride on the Nefesh Habamis, which, by the way, is very much in line with another word that the Baal Shem Tov said, where the point is that we cannot dismiss the Nefesh Habamis. We have to use the behemoth to take a ride. We have a horse in order to take the person who's sitting on the horse to the place that is to his destination. The horse couldn't care about the destination. It's the rider on the horse. And that's basically what it is. We cannot separate and dismiss the Nefesh Habamis, ignore the Nefesh Habamis. That's the other famous word of the Baal Shem Tov, that if a person sees Chamor Seinacho, Revetz Tachas Masoi, so the pasuk says, "Ozev tazev imei," you shall help him, right? You cannot ignore him, right? So the Baal Shem Tov said, "You're going to ignore him." He said, "That's not the approach. That's not the proper approach that we have with the Nefesh Habamis. You cannot ignore him, but you have to utilize him and get him on your side, whether he realizes it or not." That's ultimately the way the Baal Shem Tov saw in the broader perspective, our purpose, and in Avodas Hashem. So the Rebbe Tisfa bringen on Simchas Torah. That's was the Rebbe gesagt auf in Yudalad. Were you there, Yudalad? You weren't there yet in Yudalad. You came in Chav Zayin. Okay, so you missed it by 13 years. I wasn't born yet in Toshin Yudalad. So I was born, say, like 2.5 years ago.
You didn't understand the word.
You didn't understand it. Okay. So the Rebbe said that the fact that they were Yiddish, Bachrim, Meidalach, whatever, and they were having a party and they were dancing on Simchas Torah and inviting them into the shul was you could try, but there was a limited expectation of them actually coming into the shul. Right, to join in the hakafas. I mean, we certainly should try, and often, we are going to be successful. But even when we're not successful, said the Rebbe, why they were dancing? Because they have an Nefesh Elikis. There's David. They have an Nefesh Elikis. And the Nefesh Elikis was well aware that it was Simchas Torah. And being so well aware that it was Simchas Torah, right? They said the Nefesh Elikis somehow got them to dance. You know why they were dancing? Everything on the surface looked very inappropriate. But do you know why ultimately they were dancing? Because it was Simchas Torah. And that's how the Nefesh Elikis took a ride on a very coarse Nefesh Habamis. Sometimes it's a bumpy ride. Sometimes it gets a little muddy, right? So, you're sitting and the horse is kicking up the mud, and it flies into the wagon. It could get muddy and it's on the surface. It looks messy. But at the end of the day, the Nefesh Elikis got his dance done. He got Yidden to dance on Simchas Torah. So this is what this article, I still haven't seen the article. I'm seeing now the Sikha for the first time. I just heard now, my wife read it for me, and it was, to me, I found it very inspiring. And it's not only just inspiring, it's very revolutionary. It's the way Chassidus, the Baal Shem Tov, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the way we are to look at a situation in the most positive possible way, because it's real. That's the truth. It's the truth. That's what's really happening. So this Sikha from Topshin Yud David 70 years ago, I think, is very apropos to the situation that the choleras, these monsters, came and they interrupted Yidden dancing. You're laughing, but that's the reality. The atrocity is even worse.
Yes.
If well, I like to say worse. It's hard to make comparisons. You know what I mean? So if they go into a shul and shoot up people in a shul, that's very bad.
Yeah.
But that's not any worse than going and shooting up a party that's going because Yidden were dancing on Simchas Torah.
Well, what's really very scary is videos of Israeli soldiers interrogating them.
Interrogating the terrorists.
The ones that they've been killed, that they captured.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Ordinary guys, normal guys.
So we all know the news, we all read the news, but the point is,
They offered them $10,000 and a house and an apartment for every year.
listen, we everybody's reading news. That's one thing. We're all reading news. We all know these stories, and I guess apparently, I mean, it can do with this story thing.
Tell the animals, we never do something.
Yeah, devils, whatever, call them what they want.
Yeah, a lion eats actually when he's hungry. The antelope go and the lion sits there. Then all of a sudden he gets hungry. Those are hurting.
I'm a fox. That's what we do. You know what I mean? Okay.
And those antelopes look delicious. I don't know.
Well,
Sure.
Antelopes are kosher.
Oh, wow.
I think maybe are antelopes kosher? I think yeah, of course antelopes.
Oh wow!
I'm pretty sure.
See that? So put it in my bucket.
I haven't checked with any, but I'm pretty sure antelopes
I
are.
have to have it in my bucket. That's all.
But I don't think lions have to keep the others of kosher. Antelope.
If you have to go buy an antelope, give it to you in a second.
Yeah.
You gotta see what antelope meat tastes like.
Yeah. Anyway, so I just wanted to go over that and spend a little time, the background of what the Rebbe was saying, the word of the Baal Shem Tov and the way the Rebbe elaborated it with the mashal is something I find to be very fundamental. Don't get the Alter Rebbe, spends a lot of time helping the Beinoni not to get frustrated with his Nefesh Habans. Okay, the Alter Rebbe spends a lot of time telling the Beinoni, listen, this is the reality. The Eibishter, for whatever reason, decided to create pretty much all of us, right, with a Nefesh Habans. Ultimately, he had a plan. He knew what he was doing. So rather than get frustrated with the struggles that the Nefesh Habam is put in front of the Nefesh Elikis, accept it as the reality and deal with it. And if he means you have to come up with some kind of, conniving way, perhaps, or some kind of method, through the back door, then that's what you do. So the Nefesh Elikis finds a way to get Yidden to dance on Simchas Torah. By the way, I mean, I don't know if the Rebbe mentions this in the Sikha, but that tells you how fundamental the inyan of Rikud and Simchas Torah, right? It's just these are thoughts that actually just entered my mind right now, so I figure I'll share them with you. But we know that, of course, in Torah, whoops, what did I do here? We know, did I turn this off? Hello, you still hear me? Yeah. So we know that that in Torah, so we have, of course, mitzvahs, yeah, and we have Torah mitzvahs, but then we have a kind of like a hierarchy, if I may say it. So, wait, where are we over here?
We're talking about participants.
No. I'm looking for I did something to the screen, and I don't know what I did. Okay, but in any case. So, of course, we know that there's such a thing as a mitzvah d'oraisa. So that's a mitzvah that was given in the Torah, right? So we put on tefillin every day. We say Kriya Shema every day. These are all things. They're part of the 613 mitzvahs, which are called d'oraisa. They're from the Torah. And in a sense, there's a certain hierarchy, right? Well, then, of course, then there are what's called the mitzvahs d'Rabbanan. There's the things that the Chachamim added on. that are not part of the 613 mitzvahs. Most of them are extensions of the mitzvahs, whether mitzvahs asay or mitzvahs lo asay, right? But then we have another thing, and that's called a minhag. And the minhag, there are references in the Talmud, or in maybe not so much in the Talmud, but in other svarim, minhag yisrael toirahi. Okay, it's actually, I don't think it's a Maimer Chazal from the Gemara, but it's definitely a term that's used very frequently, and it has a mocker. Do a Google search and you'll see where the mocker is, but it's definitely, we consider, the Rebbe certainly used that phrase of minig yisrael toirahi, the minig of Yisrael. It is from Chazal, but someone argued that in Chazal it's used a little bit in a different context, but in this context, that it means that a minig yisrael is also part of Torah is very common amongst the Chachamim, the Gedolei Yisrael, etc., etc. Right now, so there is a hierarchy, so to speak, right? Because when you deal with a mitzvah deraisa, you deal with it differently than you deal with a mitzvah derabban. But and certainly when it comes to a minhag, right? So when a rav has to paskin a halacha, the way he paskins the halacha will be different depending on whether he's dealing with a deraisa, a derabbanon, or a minhag. That's a technical thing, and that's something that derabbanim need to know. But as far as the performance, right, it's important that we understand that when we are shomer Torah mitzvahs, we cannot say I'll be shomer mitzvah deraisa, not derabbanon, or you cannot even say I'll be shomer deraisa derabbanon, but not necessarily minhagim. Doesn't work that way. Our approach, as far as how we conduct ourselves, is equal, 100% equal, whether it's a deraisa, derabbanon, or even what we call a minhag. That means it was never actually instituted by the Chachamim as an obligation, but rather it's something just evolved by Yidden. The Rebbe put a lot of emphasis on the idea of minhagim, very much. And in a sense, we have to kind of treat minhagim in a sense even more, perhaps, than a mitzvah, in a way. I mean, it has a certain, what's it called? It has certain chavivos. And one of the things that the Rebbe would point out is that for many people, their identity with Yiddishkeit is primarily through minhagim. Minhagim. So eating gefilte fish is not a mitzvah d'oraisa. It may be, if you want to say, there is a day that holds that for the Onik Shabbos, which is itself a machlekes, whether it's the Raisa or it's a Divrei Kabbalah, it just comes from Yeshayahu, right? Because Onik is not mentioned in reference to Shabbos in the Torah, but it is mentioned in Yeshayahu. So we have amongst the Rishonim, even we have like a little bit of a difference of how you treat something that's from it's called Divrei Kabbalah. Kabbalah is a reference to the Nevi'im, right? Not the Kabbalah of Zayar, but so how you treat it, right? But in any case, gefilte fish. Again, there's some days that say that for any Shabbos, so meat and fish are pretty much, like standard, right? But even then, if you don't like it, right? But gefilte fish, it doesn't have to be gefilte fish.
Oh, that's
No, it doesn't have to be gefilte fish. But that's a meaning yourself, gefilte fish. So I know there was a Russian family. They're elderly, very elderly today. And they knew nothing about the Yiddishkeit. But their culture was very Jewish because they came from Kishinev. Kishinev is Moldavia, I think. And it wasn't always part of the Soviet Union. And the Yidden of Kishinev are far more traditional than the Jews of Russia after so many years. In other words, they maintained a certain connection to Yiddishkeit, but Yiddishkeit, not actual Torah mitzvahs. And to them, gefilte fish, that's the epitome of being a Jew, is making the gefilte fish the same recipe that your grandmother made in Kishinev, right here in Pittsburgh, if you can make, right? And they were so excited that she's making gefilte fish. I forget for what, but she was making gefilte fish, and she wanted to give us some gefilte fish and whatever. So I mean, and yet, in this case, that gefilte fish, by the way, that gefilte fish was the testimony of the Yiddish neshama. It was the testimony that these people have a Yiddish neshama, right? So they weren't keeping Shabbos, they're not eating kosher, not putting on tefillin, right? But the connection to Yiddishkeit was gefilte fish. So ultimately, they're not connected to gefilte fish, they're connected to Yiddishkeit. That was the connection to the neshama. And when it comes to the neshama is a neshama. Their neshama is exactly like your neshama. So my neshama, if I want to stay connected to my neshama, I have to get out of bed and go to shul in the morning. And if I don't, I'm putting some blocks between me and my neshama, because that's what's expected of me, right? Their connection, and I'm still saying that this is a connection to Yiddishkeit. It's a very, very loose connection to Yiddishkeit. But it's as strong of a connection to their neshama as my getting up and going to shul and putting up there.
It's after 120 years, it's whether before the base.
Right. So I want to share a story.
The gefilte fish will be testifying on their behalf.
So I started this conversation because Sukkot, it's only a minuk. The Rambam mentions nothing about the Hakafis. There's no mention of Rambam. And it's a minhag. It's a minhag. But guess what? The connection between this with this minhag to the etzem of the neshama of a yid is powerful and very strong. So it's not surprising that the Rebbe would say that what did the Nefesh get these people to do? He didn't get them to keep Shabbos. He didn't get them somehow to the Malachim. Where did he tell you? He gave them which is only mini Yisrael, right? He got them to dance with their feet. But by them dancing with their feet, the Nefesh Elokis was keeping them attached and connected to the essence of their existence, to the Nefesh Elokis. I want to just share a very quick story. My daughter is on Shlichus, my daughter, son-in-law, and their children, in Bend, Oregon. Now, Bend, Oregon is very difficult Shlichus. They're there for about 15 years or so, maybe more. And this year was they finally had everything would take place in their house. So whatever they did for Yom Tovim, Shabbos, Friday night meals, Rosh Hashanah, the Seder on Pesach, usually would take place in their house. Baruch Hashem, they have a nice big house. I was there for Pesach once. They had over 50 people. Baruch Hashem, they were able to fit over 50 people. They were like a very big family rooms, kind of. And it was beautiful. Now, Baruch Hashem, they have a separate place for the Chabad activities, which is very good because sometimes people are a little reluctant to go to private homes. My son had that same situation in what's it called? Let me see the participants. I was looking for near Moscow. He's near Moscow. He had Baruch Hashem a beautiful situation, but it was in one of the rich people's house. He built a beautiful shul. He has a big house, and he built the bottom floor or the basement. Beautiful shul, right? But my son felt that it's an impediment. People don't feel comfortable going to someone's private house. Who knows? Maybe they may be in business or whatever. They had some kind of a whatever. You never know, right? So now Baruch Hashem, as a Rosh Hashanah, he's in his own shul. He had built a beautiful shul. Anyway, my daughter posted something last week. There's a woman in the community that she's very close with. Now it turns out this woman. So her father had passed away just recently, and he's Jewish. The woman, however, was adopted, so she's technically not Jewish. Now, there was a situation some years ago when the kids, bar mitzvah and so on, where they couldn't make the bar mitzvah for them, right? So in many cases, unfortunately, that's kind of falling out, but somehow this woman understood. She understood. She accepted it, and she stayed very close with my daughter. Right. Anyway, she gets a call. It just says, Mimi, can we go out? We haven't gone out for coffee for a while. Can we get together for coffee? Yeah, sure. Says, my adopted father, they recently passed away, and this she's telling her on the telephone still before they met. He says, I was going through his things. Now, this guy, this father, never would come to Chabad. Maybe on occasion, he would not put on tefillin. He did not want to know from anything, as much as they try. He does not want to know from anything. Okay. And it could be that he was more resentful over the fact that Chabad wouldn't do a bar mitzvah for his grandchildren, right, than the mother of the children herself, right? Because she understood, whatever. I don't really know who she is, but I know that she stayed close with my daughter. So, I was going through my father's wallet, his stuff, and I went through his wallet, and I found a picture in there. And I have no idea who it is. Can you help me? So, my daughter says, send me a picture, and I'll be right. She sends her a picture. I have the picture because my daughter then forwarded it on the family thing. It's a picture of the Rebbe. Oh. So here's a guy who would not put on tefillin. He was very reluctant to come to anything, to any event in Chabad, right? And what does the father find in his wallet? A picture of the Rebbe. Now, why is the guy holding a picture of the Rebbe? The answer is very simple. Better if you would put on tefillin, there's no question. You're not Yates tefillin by having a picture of the Rebbe, right? But having a picture of the Rebbe is the testimony that whatever connection you create or you put on tefillin, that person had that connection to the picture of the Rebbe. He had it because there's a yid with a neshama. And that is what I would like to leave with you, for you, today. Okay, Kinderach.
You want her to get to finish story.
So yeah, you can see it could be gefilte fish, it could be a picture in your wallet. It doesn't replace tefillin, it doesn't replace Shabbos, but it does make a connection, and the connection is with the very essence of your